Yesterday was a good day, but I'm sure that this morning's panel is going to be not entertaining, but it's going to be something that I think we really will have to get our teeth into, because all too often community struggles, and we're going to hear from the different panels. We've got Pinda Mofokeng on the fees must fall on the end. We've got Noel Solani from the Mzala Nxumalo Centre, and we've got baseMjondolo from Abahlali baseMjondolo. And we have Busisi Weseabe, who is here as a research fellow, but she's going to talk to African feminisms and the struggles of women. She is also very active in the Fees Must Fall movement, so I think there's going to be a lot of crossover with her presentation in terms of what she will present to us. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to hand over now to baseMjondolo from Abahlali baseMjondolo to do his presentation. Welcome, Sbu. You want to stand there?
Comrade Program Director, Amandla, Comrade Panelist. It is a great pleasure to see so many of you to be using this opportunity today to share our struggles, our pain, the opportunities that are also presented. It is our honor to thank Mzala Nxumalo Centre for inviting us here to speak at this conference. I only get this opportunity because of the movement I am part of, so I would also like to thank Abahlali baseMjondolo for this opportunity, and also for entrusting me with this responsibility to present our views njengabahlali, also in places like this. We take our place in our cities, we take them humbled, but we also take them very firm. Abahlali baseMjondolo has about 35,000 members in about 38 branches here in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Eastern Cape, Western Cape and Gauteng. In July this year, we will be launching our first branch in Mpumalanga province in Vukuzakhe township. Our members are fundamentally committed to the struggle for land, housing and dignity. We have occupied land and held land across the city. Some of our members have been arrested, they have been assaulted, they have been slandered, tortured and murdered in our struggle. The struggle for land is a struggle to put the social value of land before its commercial value. For this reason, our struggle is clearly anti-capitalist struggle. And when we take dignity seriously, it quickly becomes clear that building a society in keeping with human dignity requires that wealth and land must be shared fairly and equally and managed democratically. For this reason, we have always been clear that our struggle is a struggle from the left, and we always walk towards the left, and sometimes to the far left, and sometimes people get confused. This is clearly explained to new members. We have valuable relationship with radical comrades around the world and movements like the MST in Brazil. We are interested in building a living communism that emerges from the lives and struggles of the oppressed and that can be used to build the power of the oppressed. Wherever possible, we are committed to building alliances based on autonomy and mutual respect with other organizations struggling to build a more just world. Our members are already working with different organizations on certain programs. For instance, in Wandengezi, by Maran Hillside, our members are closely working with the South African Communist Party to ensure that the two criminal councillors, also gangsters, responsible for the assassination of our comrade Thuli Ndlovu, comrade Mobeni, were arrested, charged, and prosecuted, and they are now rotting in jail. Wherever different radical organizations have common objectives, we must find ways to work together. Impoverishment is killing our people. It is dividing us. Sometimes we get co-opted. The councillors are killing our people. Some politicians are killing our people. It is vital that we work together and build effective alliance for change. For this reason, we welcome the initiative of this conference, and we salute Mzala Nxumalo Centre for organizing this and for enabling us to share this opportunity, our views with different organizations, progressive intellectuals who are part of us. Building a society where there are unequal opportunities and fair distribution of land, wealth and gains for everyone is never an easy task. We are confronted with a very tough task of struggling to achieve a society of Ubuntu when Ubuntu is not done to us. We are confronted with a very tough task of having to redirect anger to where it should best serve the interests of the impoverished and the working class. In this dilemma, sometimes we have to question our own strategies, our own practice and our own tactics employed to deal with the evil of inequalities and injustices. As we reflect on how we can achieve this goal, the forces that are meant to keep us apart, that are meant to keep the status quo, will try to keep us apart and continue to divide us. It is not just the politicians that try to divide us. Some NGOs perform the same roles. Some academics perform the same roles. Some people who still call themselves comrades, who are part of us, perform the same role. We have faced serious repression since our movement was formed in 2005. That repression has come from the ruling party, from the police, and from the local gangsters. It has often hidden itself behind the prejudice that exists in the society against people who are black and impoverished. No leftist will be surprised by any of this. However, we have also faced serious attacks from people in universities and NGOs who find their power to be threatened by self-organization and impoverished people. Sometimes these attacks have aligned themselves very closely with the state repression. They have always been racist and dishonest. There is a serious problem of racism, corruption, authoritarianism, and power hunger amongst some of the leftists in universities and NGOs. Obviously, not everybody. But these forces have emerged amongst the people who are supposed to be part of us. Their role has become to silence us in the name of solidarity. We are also confronted by the regressive forces who are blinded by the love of the black capital. It is fundamentally wrong to think that black oppression is normal and therefore it should be welcomed. Oppression remains oppression irrespective of who oppresses us. Landlessness, evictions, and assassination remain evil, even if they are perpetuated by black leaders. We are not struggling to ensure that our oppressors are changed from white people to black people. We are struggling to end our oppression, irrespective of who perpetuates them. In the left, or if the left cannot heal itself, if it cannot be honest, if it cannot learn to understand that people have a right to organize themselves, to think for themselves, to represent themselves, and to take decision for themselves, then the continued devastation of our people are inevitable. Another tough task is to help some politicians to remember that lies cannot be accepted in our society. It cannot be business as usual. Abantu nje ngeke baqamba amanga. Baqhubeke nje baqamba amanga. Ngoba naku bebizwa ngama-leaders. Last week I attended a provincial summit on social cohesion and moral regeneration organized by the Office of the Premier here in KwaZulu-Natal. The summit was attended by very high-profile government officials, cabinet ministers, civil society, and other groups and individuals. In that summit, almost everyone who spoke referred to and based their presentation to people on the ground, to people who are living emakhaya, to abantu abahlala emaplazini, and to people who are living in townships, because that's where we suspect that there will be evil, there will be immorality, there will be need for moral regeneration. We are made to believe that the so-called smart people, rich people, and sometimes middle-class people, because suddenly they dress smart in suit and ties, then they can be exempted from the moral regeneration projects, suggesting that because they have money and dress so smartly, and therefore they are holy. Then when we think of the immorals and evil, then it is obvious that it is the impoverished whose moral should be corrected. Our humanity seems to be judged by class and socioeconomic status. So our task has been to go out and help those people and the nation in building a better society. Nobody says we must begin with councillors, with what councillors, for instance? Abantu abanamanga. Mayors, for instance, politicians in general, who continue to lie and ignore the plight of the oppressed, who are involved in corruption. These people promote lies, and when you ask them to account, then bazokutshela ukuthi intombi ishelwa ngamanga. Bamtshela uThaphelo one day ukuthi no ume uyasikhohlisa, she's been lying. Kuthiwa wena qabana wazi ukuthi intombi ishelwa ngamanga. Then that suggests honesty is not the best policy. That's what intombi ishelwa ngamanga means. Honesty is not the best policy. So lies should be accepted. It should be normalized in our society. How can the people who violently evict impoverished people, including children and women, leave them homeless and be trusted with anything? How did we even begin this conversation without addressing issues of socioeconomic inequalities and organized disrespect for the impoverished? Abahlali have refused to accept oppression in the name of the new democratic society. We have refused oppression in the name of a better life for all. We have refused oppression even when we have our own home destroyed in the name of law and order. We have refused oppression even in the name of the so-called caring mayor. And yes, we have refused oppression even in the face of death. We have lost comrades in our struggle. Recently, we have lost baby Jade in Khoza at the hands of the police in Foreman Road during the road blockade. The harmless and the innocent have suffered injustices and paid the ultimate price for being impoverished. Icala lakhe has been that uzalelwe emndenini ompofu ohlala emkhukhwini. Therefore, the ultimate sacrifice would have to have baby Jaden killed by the police. How do we trust people like this? We continue to build the power of the impoverished from below. We continue to educate ourselves on how we can achieve the kind of a society we envisioned. Abahlali baseMjondolo is not just a lousy service delivery group, people who are only serious about basic services. We are a movement that has a vision. We have a kind of a society that we envisioned. Our most born emgwaqeni, this is not just about doing. It is also about the kind of a society that we want to build. A just, equal society. A society where every human being is treated with respect and dignity. Whether that is on the right, the middle, or the left, it is up to this conference. Abahlali has come up with a new idea. It may not be new. Ubuhlali is our own philosophy. It's our driving force. Ubuhlali, ubuhlalism. Whether it translates into socialism, whatever zim, but we believe that ubuhlali is the way to go. It is a pride spirit of belonging to Ubuntu. It is Ubuntu that must drive us. We become abantu before we become organizations, before we become comrades, aligned to other comrades. But without Ubuntu in our own humanity, then the struggle might lose track. We also continue to educate the state, policymakers, and NGOs, and the society at large on ubuhlali. We continue to educate all experts and that the struggle we are engaged is not just about the so-called service delivery, but the restoration of our human dignity. So masibona simasha kusasa ungathi this is one of the so-called lousy service delivery protests, violent service delivery protests. Abahlali are not doing this. This is not about service. It's not the question of budget constraints that suddenly the state must address. It is about the restoration of our own humanity. Unfortunately, for us to be heard, the famous language and the current language that the state understands, it's the direct action. We got to stand up and do something. It is about reclaiming our own well-being of Ubuntu. For the left today, the struggle should be to build the society that builds Ubuntu first. For the left of today, the struggle should be built on the basis that defines our own Ubuntu. Now we define Ubuntu in relation to others. No muntu can be, in fact, Ubuntu can only be complete in relation to other abantu. So umuntu ngabantu. So your Ubuntu bakho should be defined in relation to others, not in an island. It's how you relate to others, your neighbors, your family. That's how we should be building strong family foundation for us to have a community, a society. Without that, if our struggles are not informed, we might sort of lose track. Now, the living politics becomes critical. It becomes the foundation of all politics, hence we have to start from where we are with what we have. In doing this, we must be guided by strong principles and values of ubuhlali. In this, we must acknowledge that freedom without land, freedom without decent housing is meaningless. Freedom without real democracy is fake. So I want to end, comrade, by making a clarion call. Abahlali baseMjondolo bangicelile bahlali ukuthi ngasebenzisa nale space nje sengigcina ukucela nje amabomvu esekhona la ukuthi mhla ka-26 June sizobe siphume ngobuningi bethu siyolungisa iTheku, because we must reclaim our city, we must reclaim our spaces. So sewamema wonke ama-comrades ala especially those who see themselves walking on the left, ukuthi they join us as siyolungisa itheku, siyolungisa amanga, labantu abasikhohlisayo, siyobafaka endleleni. Siyawacela ama-comrades ukuthi abe nathi. I know sometimes to be on the left is not an easy task because it talks to one's income. Ungazuluza itoho. Some of us are left in heart, but outside we are the colors. Vis-a-vis, abanye babovu nje ngaphandle, bama left from outside, but inside far right. So this is one of the challenges that confront us. So we are making that open invitation. We are hoping Mzala Nxumalo would assist us in connecting with the right people on the left. It's a question that should be asked Abahlali baba kuphi when other progressive forces are engaged in struggles. Now our students or fees must fall and so on. Basuke be kuphi Abahlali. I think it's time to ask us those questions. But also Abahlali ask the same question ukuthi, when we are oppressed, when baby Jaden is killed in the hands of the police, why the left is so silent? Where is everybody when we continue to be oppressed? Why it should be fancy conferences like this that unite us, that brings us into one space? Why when we are supposed to be engaged, then you don't find unity? We ask to be realistic and work together to achieve a goal that we all desired. I thank you one and all.
Next up is Noel Salani from the Mzala Nxumalo Centre.
I think the theme of the conference is the future of the left. And I think it assumes that, or questions that the left perhaps does not have a future. Or it assumes that there is a future, but what is that particular future in terms of the left? In order to assist us in dealing with that particular topic, I made some notes that begin to ask what is the dilemma of the post-1994 democratic breakthrough? Because I acknowledge that in 1994 there was a particular breakthrough that moved us from a particular system of oppression that was called apartheid, with all its legislations that anchored it. And I do this by looking at a broad survey with no specific cases in terms of community struggles in South Africa. But I begin by tracing that in the 1950s, just briefly, and conclude by asking certain questions that I do not answer myself, which I hope will be points of discussions in this particular forum. And as we know, in the 1950s, as part of a mobilization of the masses to fight freedom against oppression, the liberation movements came up with a slogan, Amandla. When uttering these words, one would clench the fist, signaling the power of unity. The people will, in return, shout in unison, Gawethu. This slogan took us to the 1994 democratic breakthrough in South Africa. Amandla, or power to the people, was aimed at inculcating to the masses that it is within their power to liberate themselves. And because there was a point in which people were looking that liberation will be brought from somewhere, but you needed to educate the masses in a very strong term that nobody else is going to liberate you but yourself. And I think that slogan remains relevant today. It was also to inculcate to the working class that the economy of the country is possible because of their labor power. In short, it was a creation of a consciousness among the masses that there was no one else except themselves that would alleviate the pain of the conditions of their existence. The only solution they had at their disposal was unity of purpose and fighting for their rights. These struggles were mainly led by the Congress Alliance, and we invoke some authority, Jack and Ray Simons, because they point out that the abolition of Bantu education, the state. They point out that the contradictions between the dynamic potential of a multiracial labor force and the straitjacket of racially segregated institutions, between the dominant collective role of Africans in the economy and their exclusion from central power, is what kept apartheid intact. And I think those that are familiar with labor laws before, you would know that those of us who come from the Western Cape, you will know that Africans in the Western Cape, and I think nationally, could not perform certain jobs. They could not become artisans because those jobs, to be a bricklayer, to be a carpenter, to be whatever, was reserved for what was called the colored community. And so it went according to the scale. Community struggles reflected and continue to reflect the race and class nature of the liberation struggle. Our analysis of community struggles in the contemporary era needs to take this into account. And I think as Zikote was talking, he was beginning to reflect on the nature of the race and class struggle. Perhaps I should add that there is also a gender dimension in all community struggle, because the people who are mostly caregivers in homes are women. And they are the most oppressed in any community because of the role that they play in society. It doesn't necessarily mean they should continue playing that role, because men can also be caregivers. The period of the 1980s saw all the struggles coordinated under the umbrella of the United Democratic Front, which was launched in Cape Town in 1983, and the Congress of South African Trade Unions, which was launched in December 1985, I think. As resistance for better living and working conditions escalated both in townships and in industries, the regime felt the pain and the struggle intensified. An example of the intensification of these struggles is the rent boycott that was led, for example, in Cradock by Matthew Goniwe and Fort Galata. That resulted in the end to their death. So I think, let me again refer to Zikote. These things in terms of repression by the state continues, are not new, and they continue. And I think those that remember the Cradock 4 massacre, Matthew Goniwe was a principal of a school who realized that in the community in which he was staying, Lingelihle Township, at the time, there was going to be a rent increase because homes were belonging to the municipality. And if you did not pay your rent, the municipality had the right to evict you, even if you've been staying there for years. Matthew Goniwe could not understand this. They mobilized together with Fort Galata and others. And as a result, the rent boycott in Cradock lasted for a longer period than anywhere else in the country. But it also was able to mobilize all the small towns in the Karoo. And with Goniwe being the rural organizer in the UTF was able to travel throughout the Karoo and the Northeastern Cape, mobilizing. As a result, when consumer boycott came, that whole area, together with the first state of emergency declared in 1985, was unstable, and the state could not govern it. Each time the police murdered people in their fight for better living conditions, more communities joined in the struggle as an act of both solidarity and fighting for the betterment of their living conditions in towns in which were increasingly becoming economically depressed. And I will talk about this depression later. Students under the leadership of the Congress of South African Students, COSAS, formed in 1979, mobilized students to fight for free provision of textbooks and stationery, and for the abolishment of Bantu education. The state partially yielded by providing textbooks and stationery in all schools under the Department of Education and Training in 1986. Those of my age would know that there were different education systems in South Africa. There was Department of Education and Training for townships in the Republic. The homelands had their education system. The colored community had National Christian Education, and I think and whites. And obviously, in terms of budget, it was given according to race. Henceforth, you will find today, it continues, white schools were more beautiful than black schools. And you wouldn't find in white areas children studying under trees or in churches or in halls, etc. These were just partial concessions that did not address the structural programs of our society as a whole. As soon as these concessions were made, by the mid-1980s, the regime began a process of dismantling the South African railway and harbors into different entities that the democratic state inherited. The current airport, what is it? AXA, the SAA, and the ports, and all those used to be one entity. And for those of us who live along the railway line with junction stations, actually felt the brunt of that particular process, because we literally experienced and saw in front of our eyes people being retrenched from their jobs, given 10,000 rand, even though they have worked for more than 20 years in the railway system. And some of them were just built homes, so that 10,000 rand went to a home that they still owned, and the families were left with nothing. So we experienced that particular thing. Henceforth, I think I like to come back to this all the time. Railway workers were retrenched in numbers, thus causing high levels of unemployment. Many had no alternative skills and had to stay at home, unable to feed their families. As the struggle of liberation intensified, the economy of South Africa was feeling the pinch. Debatably, many of the struggling masses associated their struggle with those of the exiled liberation movement, especially the African National Congress. Over time, the ANC and its alliance partners came to represent the aspirations of the toiling masses and their struggles. Therein lies, in my view, the dilemma of the post-1994 democratic breakthrough. The promise of 1994, which brought hope that the objectives of the Freedom Charter would be met in this generation and the aspirations of the people's demands filled. And I think I need to reflect on that because there is a view that the objectives that people fought for is not possible to fulfill in one generation. There is that particular view. But there are also views that it is possible to fulfill those objectives in this generation if we use the fiscals properly. Now, what was the 1994 promise? Perhaps we need to reflect on that. The 1994 promise was of a South Africa free of oppressive laws and where the aspirations contained in the Freedom Charter would be fulfilled. Democracy to the masses was the attainment of the first clause of the Freedom Charter, the people shall govern. Attainment of the right to vote and electing a government was not for voting's sake, meaning it was not an end of itself. The hope was that a government elected by the people will be able to meet the other objectives of equal rights, access to wealth, land, creation of work and security, opening the doors of learning and culture, access to decent housing, and etc. So that was the hope. In this sense, the Freedom Charter was the embodiment of people's aspirations. These aspirations are also contained in Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So they continued to be relevant. Constitutionally, the objectives to guarantee these aspirations was achieved. In other words, the new constitution was aimed at protecting citizens against various forms of deprivation and brutality, as was experienced in towns like Cradock in the 1980s. And Zikode is saying to us today, we continue experiencing that brutality even today with this particular kind of constitution. What is the experience of the past 5 years then? The past 5 years has experienced increased number of protests throughout the world, from Brazilians protesting against fee hike in buses and metros in 2013, in protest that grew to include costs of living, substandard provision of social services, corruption and police brutality, to Romania's anti-corruption protest in 2017 in the United States of America anti-Trump protests. In South Africa, the number of community protests that slowly started in 2004 and which were issue-based have increased in the past 5 years to include demands for better living conditions. In most rural areas and informal settlements, the protest is about the demands for clean water, electricity, and roads infrastructure. At times, the disputes on these matters relate to border disputes, especially in border towns where residents feel that their lives could be better if they were in Province A or District Municipality B. The cases of Bushbuckridge, Mirafong, and Matatiele are examples. In the case of Matatiele, who were redemarcated to the Eastern Cape from KwaZulu-Natal, this has come to haunt the ruling ANC as we see what is happening in Ekurhuleni. In Ekurhuleni, the party that holds the balance of forces in that coalition government is threatening to withdraw if the ruling party does not address the issue of Matatiele. The latest case of protest against being demarcated in Area B instead of A is the case of, is also happening in Vuwani, I think, as we speak. The drivers for these protests need a strong left-wing movement analysis. And it needs the left movement to participate in them, lead them, and be deeply grounded in them so that they can also fully understand them. There are strong indications that the drivers for these protests are economic, in similar ways that motivated community struggles in the past. This is not to deny that there may as well be social and political issues associated with them, as some have suggested. In urban centers, most community struggles are influenced by the daily living conditions that people find themselves, the lack of serviced housing land. This results to some people living in informal settlement. Most of these informal settlements lack the basic facilities such as proper sanitation. The demand for toilets in Makaza, Khayelitsha in Cape Town is one of the protests that deteriorated to the lowest levels as some protesters dumped human excretion in the provincial legislature. Now we need to ask ourselves what drives people to do that because it is inhumane. So what drives them to make that particular kind of sacrifice and dehumanizes themselves as well in the process. So, and I think those are the things we are not looking at. Derek is saying I have 5 minutes. I think I will be finished in 5 minutes. Looking at many other protests, such as student protests taking place throughout the world in the post-Cold War era, perhaps the time has arrived that we reconsider our political and economic system. And I think the challenge lies not perhaps at times in the unwillingness, at least in South Africa, of the state not to do these things. But it lies with our economic system that we need to check. And we need to say what kind of economic system we desire that will fulfill our own aspirations. Or is the current system able to fulfill our aspirations? Probably that's also the question. And I think Gramsci has dealt with this question in his collected works. I will not say what Gramsci says. What we can extrapolate from these protests is that there has been an increase in the number and types of communities protesting over one thing or another. It may be for housing or against e-tolls. The struggles in other areas about that. In Gauteng, the middle class is faced with or strapped in debt. That is not, and then there are e-tolls, and they feel the pinch, and therefore the protest numbers increase. And I think so that I can meet the 5 minutes that I'm assigned to. Let me conclude with these questions, which are subtle questions. One is, how do we change society for the better? The second question that I think we need to answer is the role of the left in the material struggles of the masses on the ground. The third question probably that I need is to ask is, who leads these struggles? What is their ideological orientation, if any? Does the left understand? Does the left know that? Because if it knows that, it needs to embed itself in them, or if it doesn't know, it needs to understand that. If our analysis is correct that in the past 5 years, there has been a rise of protest marches in various provinces for one issue or another, and these struggles are led and not by the middle class, but by the working class or unemployed, then where are the parties of the working class in these struggles? Where are the trade unions? Because the question of unemployment should directly concern the trade union movement. If the trade unions are not concerned about the question of unemployment, then I don't know what are they concerned about. Are they only concerned about those that are already at work? So we need, I think, to interrogate those questions. And by asking these questions, we do not seek to deny the contribution of the ANC in the national democratic struggle. In the past 22 years, the ANC has contributed in uniting the country on the basis of non-racialism. It contributed in ushering in one of the most human rights-oriented constitutions. It contributed in creating a safety net for the poor and deprived through grants and other means. Henceforth, and therefore, probably we would say that is not enough. One question perhaps which have to be asked in the past few days, which has not been asked in the past few days, which we need to ask, is the left able to harness its energies and work together? Or are the ideological, strategic, and tactical questions too deep to work together and lead struggles together in a loose alliance? I think I should conclude there. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for the invitation. I would love to comment on what you've just presented, Baba, but for the purposes of time, I'm just going to delve deep into my presentation, and hopefully a lot of the things that you spoke about, I'll be able to cover here. Essentially, I've noted that in the program, I've been noted as someone who comes from the AWOL Socioeconomic Research Institute, as a fellow there, but what I'm presenting on is the repositioning of the left using Black radical feminism to create a more humane socialism. And that is currently what the project is, specifically in Johannesburg, where I'm coming from the Black Women's Caucus that's there. So the reason why in Johannesburg, specifically under the Black Women's Caucus, we're repositioning the left using Black radical feminism is because of the many contradictions that we find within Marxism, within the left today, and the movement of the left, essentially. So Black feminism becomes popular in the 1960s in response to sexism of the civil rights movement and racism of the feminist movement as well. And this is why we've now moved away from feminist movements to more Black radical feminists. This speaks to the question of race, this speaks to the question of gender as well, and this is the new positioning of the left, particularly in Johannesburg, right? So in order for us to understand the value of Black radical feminism and the value that it brings towards the desperate need to reposition the left, we need to understand and come to a consensus as to what consolidates the left, right? What consolidates the left and how we can move from a more scientific socialism to a humane socialism. So leftists believe, along with the Jacobins of the French Revolution, of course, that the goods of the world are unjustly distributed and the fault lies not in human nature, but in surplus practiced by a dominant class. Right? Many of you may not agree with my simplified definition of leftists. However, you might agree with the notion that they define themselves as being in opposition to established power, and that we essentially are the champions of the new order that will rectify the ancient grievances of the oppressed. Now, this is a noble conviction. However, the question then arises as to what exactly are these grievances that need to be resolved, and and where do we position men and women with regards to these ancient grievances that need to be resolved in accordance with the leftist principles, even though we might look at them as being semantics. And these semantics move from production, for instance, to how we engage in what we consider to be a social contract, right? So let's look at, for instance, the liberation advocated by the left-wing movements today. We understand it to not simply mean freedom from political oppression or the right to go about one's business undisturbed, but rather this is a liberation that advocates emancipation from structures, from institutions, custom, conventions that shaped the bourgeoisie order and which established a shared system of norms and values at the heart of Western society. Now, deconstructing these institutions, such as the family, the school, the law, and the nation state through which inheritance of the Western civilization has been passed down to us, comes at a supposed cost of civil order, right? So when we speak about civil order, we speak about civil order in accordance with Foucault, what Foucault calls the structures of dominance. And when we look at the structures of dominance, we need to now understand how does then Black radical feminism attempt to reconstruct these structures of dominance, and how does it attempt to move around those conventions of dominance, right? As a Black radical feminist, I don't subscribe to structures of dominance because they are inherently rooted in capitalism and patriarchy. So now the question emerges as to how then do the left radical feminists maintain civil order, because it is necessary to some extent in order to have some sort of humane socialism, as I will advocate further. To answer that, we must understand what the intent of such an order is, firstly, and how this order facilitates social justice and the liberation of the oppressed, of which the Black woman is the most oppressed. Now, Tata, you mentioned about how women are the most oppressed and they are the caregivers, but what the left refuses to acknowledge is that Marxist feminism does not adhere or does not respond to the issues of women as a gender, as a specific, or specifically Black women as a race and as a gender within the leftist wing. And this is where you find the emergence of a new left that is centered and rooted in feminism. So we have the traditional left, which is what I assume assume everyone in this room subscribes to, and then there's the emergence now of the new left, but then there's now an emergence of a new left that is black feminist left inclined, and that champions on black feminism as opposed to the traditional conventions of Marxist leftists. So I personally see the pursuit of liberation to be one that is restless, because new victims always appear over the horizons as the lost ones escape the void, right? For instance, the liberating of black women from male oppression, of animals from human abuse, of homosexuals and transsexuals from homophobia have all been absorbed into the more recent leftist agendas that are enshrined in the laws and committees overseen by censorious officialdom, right? The cause of liberation has seen the proliferation of more laws than were ever invented to suppress it. An example of this is, of course, the non-discrimination laws that have now come up and emerged and continue to emerge throughout the transition of the leftist movement. The fact that the liberation of women is left to law and censorious officialdom is problematic, as these are subjective and biased. And yet again, they pit the struggle of women against that of the marginalized and the oppressed mass, as though it were an afterthought. Even the concept of social justice, for instance, is subjective under leftism, as its aims are centered around the goal of comprehensively rearranging society so that hierarchies and even the unequal distribution of goods are either overcome or challenged. This illustrates the left's move from equality before the law and the equal claim to the right of citizenship, as was advocated at the Enlightenment, to something that is what we're yet to assume that feminist is, what we're yet to assume and conclude, according to Marxism, that feminism is part, or feminists and women are part of the working class alone. And this is where the problem essentially emanates from when looking at Marxism and his definition of the feminist critique and his inclusion there. As a leftist, even I know the two goals of liberation and social justice are not obviously compatible. So the whole aim and objective of the Black Feminist Caucus is to be able to find a succinct or to find an intertwining connection between liberation and social justice from a leftist perspective, right? So, like I mentioned, as a leftist, I know that these two goals of liberation and social justice are not obviously compatible any more than the liberty and equality advocated at the French Revolution are, right? But consider it this way. If liberation involves, and many people have, cautioned it or they've given it out this way, but if liberation involves individual potential, right? And this is what is problematic, because what leftism presents to us as Black women, as Black feminists, is that it is more individual and subscribes itself to individual potential in the sense of maintaining this working class and trying to liberate this working class outside of the liberation of the Black female or the Black feminist. So if liberation involves the liberation of individual potential, how do we then stop, as it's mentioned obviously before, the ambitious, the energetic, the intelligent, the hardworking, the good-looking, the strong from getting ahead, and what should we allow ourselves by way of constraining them? So as a Black radical feminist, this individual potential is collectivized. So now, how does the collectivized potential of Black women compromise the politics of the left, the politics with a goal? Because essentially that is what Marxism attempts to do through the leftist movement. It is a movement with a goal. Since our place is judged by the lengths one is willing to go to in order to achieve that goal, why can't it be that the collectivized potential and energies that are invested through Black radical feminism are used within the leftist framework? Now, I've just given you all jargon. I've just ran through different concepts of the individual potential. I've ran through collective potential. I've ran through something like humane socialism. I've ran through scientific socialism, but I haven't gone to the essence of what Black radical feminism is on the leftist side. And I'm just going to skip through something quickly. So I just wanted to go through what Marx speaks about in Das Kapital. So in Black radical feminism, we don't refer to Marx as a man, but we rather refer to him as a woman. So what we've started engaging in Yes, we refer to him as a woman. So we move from he to she. So we say she says A, B, C, and she. And the reason why we do that is we are attempting within the leftist movement to challenge the ideals of patriarchy constructively. So what happens is we will be together on the left, and as a left movement together, including men and women, you'll find men in the space saying, no, we're feminists. Us. No, we believe in the emancipation of women. We believe that women are going to lead this country. We believe that women are the most oppressed. And then you turn around and you say, hey, that woman over there is making a noise, and you collapse an entire male. I challenge you to try it. If you go outside and you're amongst the collective of men who consider themselves to be leftists, who consider themselves to be progressive, if you go amongst them and you call them she's and women, you will collapse that entire space as a black woman. Because essentially for them, it is how do you then compare us to a black woman? What about us gives you the aesthetic of an emotional being, or one that is irrational, or one that is there to essentially serve the black man, even in the context of this emancipation and this revolution we're all supposedly fighting for, right? And this is something that Karl Marx speaks about when he contrasts the utopian socialism with the scientific socialism that he believed, or that she believed, predicted the full outcome of communism. Right? So when she speaks about, or when she speaks in Das Kapital and the laws of historical motion, or simply put, the successive changes in the economic infrastructure of society, enabling the prediction of the end of private property, she believed that after a period of socialist guardianship or dictatorship of the proletariat, that the state would wither away and there would be no law or no need for it, right? So just running quickly ahead, when we look at the struggle against capitalism and patriarchy as black radical feminists, we believe that the struggle against capital and patriarchy cannot be successful if the study and practice of the issues of feminism are given up. A struggle aimed at capitalist relations of oppression will fail, since their underlying supports in patriarchal relations of oppression will be overlooked. And the analysis of patriarchy is essential to a definition of the kind of socialism that would destroy patriarchy, the only kind of socialism that is useful to women. While men and women share a need to overthrow capitalism, they retain interests particular to their gender groups. And this becomes one of the fundamental problems of the left. The fact that we all want to overthrow capitalism together as a collective means that we still can't put aside our self-interests as gender groups in order for the advancement of socialism, right? So it is not clear from our sketch or from history or from male socialists that the socialism being struggled for is the same for both men and women. For a humane socialism would require not only consensus on what the new society should look like and what a healthy person should look like, but more concretely, it would require that men relinquish their privilege. As women, we must not allow ourselves to be talked out of the urgency and importance of our tasks, and as we have so many times in the past. We must fight the attempted coercion, both subtle and not so subtle, to abandon feminist objectives. This suggests two strategic considerations. First, a struggle to establish socialism must be a struggle in which groups with different interests form alliance. Women should not trust men to liberate them after the revolution, in part because there is no reason to think that they would. You have no proof, no evidence to think that after we've attained this revolution, that these men would somehow liberate you, or even before this revolution is completed, we would have found some sort of liberation. So then the first strategic point is for us to liberate ourselves, essentially, right? In part because there is no reason to think that they would not know how to, or in part because there is no necessity from men to liberate us, or from them to do so, or engage in the project of the liberation of women. In fact, their immediate interest lies in our continued oppression, and we see this even in the leftist movement, right? And this is also prevalent in even movements like the EFF as well, that has now emerged as the so-called vanguard of the leftist movement in South Africa. Instead, we must have our own organizations and our own power base. Second, we think the sexual division of labor within capitalism has given women a practice in which we have learned to understand what human interdependence and needs are. We agree with Vogel, right? That while men have long struggled against capitalism, women know what to struggle for. As a general rule, men's position in patriarchy and capitalism prevents them from recognizing both human needs for nurturance, sharing, and growth, and the potential for meeting those needs in a non-hierarchical, non-patriarchal society. But even if we raise their consciousness, men might assess the potential gains against the potential losses and choose the status quo. Men have more to lose than their chains. As feminist socialists, we must organize a practice which addresses both the struggle against patriarchy and the struggle against capitalism. Black radical feminism insists that the society we want to create is a society in which recognition of interdependence is liberation rather than shame. Nurturance is universal, not an oppressive practice, and in which the women do not continue to support the false as well as the concrete freedoms of men. Now, I mentioned the fact that in Johannesburg at the moment, there is a rise in what is called the Black Feminist Caucus, which advocates for Black radical feminism as opposed to the traditional form of feminism, because we understand that that one is racially divided. It is more for white women than it is for the majority of the indigenous people of South Africa. So some of the programs that are being championed by this left feminist caucus that is coming out of Johannesburg are centered around the media, the politics of the stomach, marketing, outreach, education. And so I'm just going to go through just briefly, very quickly. With regards to media, what they're doing at the moment is that they're appealing to journalists and photographers to establish legitimacy as a voice of protest. And this is very important. This is something that the left has not been able to do for the longest time, which is to establish a legitimacy as a voice of protest. Individuals that belong to the leftist movement have been able to do this, but not a leftist movement as a collective. Right? And this becomes important if we're going to be able to use something like Newspeak in order to push on the propaganda of socialism onto the masses. Because essentially when you look at the concept of Newspeak, I'm assuming a lot of people are familiar with it. No? I'll take that as a no. There's a concept called Newspeak. I'd like to encourage people to read up on it. And essentially the concept of Newspeak is about how words within the English vocabulary are not only created but are used in a particular way to manipulate a specific mass or to manipulate a specific ideology to suit the individual that is speaking, right? So for me, it's me taking feminism and not giving it to you as the feminism you know, but using the English language to turn it into something that I want it to be, right? So this is just like a very broad outline of what Newspeak is, but this is one of the tools that they're using at the moment in Johannesburg through the media to establish a legitimacy, a legitimate voice to protest. And then there's the politics of the stomach. So I'm currently working on a bylaw for creating a sustainable city project. And the politics of the stomach becomes important because you can't ask people or the mass to come to the ground or to support a particular ideology when there's the issue of hunger, when there's the issue of what are they going to eat at the end of the day, what are they going to sustain themselves with even when they're on the ground with you. So by creating this bylaw is for a sustainable city project where the city of Johannesburg will have to relinquish some parts of the communal parks that are there in order for us to grow vegetables and fruits and so forth to give out to the community in disadvantaged areas. Now that will be used as a mobilizing tool for this left black feminist movement in order to gain the masses that it needs to push the kind of leftist propaganda that would like to, I probably shouldn't be calling it propaganda, right? I probably should be calling it socialism, socialist notions that we're moving on to. And one of the most fundamental components of the black radical feminist movement is that there are no white allies. There are no white allies at all. White allies are not welcome within that space because essentially black radical feminism comes from because black radical feminism is a response to the oppression that black women were subjected to in the feminist movement to begin with that started around the 1960s. So it would make no sense for us to run away from the same people who are oppressing us and then invite them into our space, because we understand that the hierarchy of society is, it places the white man at the top, the white woman, the black man, the child, and then the black woman at the bottom. So that is essentially how we are going to engage with the left to say, if we're going to achieve a socialist revolution in this country, we have to start from the bottom up, and that bottom is the black woman, and that's the only time that this revolution will essentially be able to emanate into society. I mean, there are a lot of programs that we're working on as the Black Radical Feminist Caucus, but for me it is to say to the left and the left movement, how do we then take the aspirations, how do we then take the objectives of the Black Radical Feminist movement and incorporate them within the conventional leftist movement in order for us to achieve the revolution that we have. Because unfortunately, what the Black Radical Feminist group is willing to do is sacrifice the black man in order to attain the revolution. And that becomes problematic because as black people, as a collective, both men and women, we have both been oppressed. Even though black women face oppression on a different scale, even from the black man, we still have hope in you, we want to liberate you. But if the time comes and the need comes for us to liberate ourselves at your expense as black men, we are willing to do so, which is something we don't want to do, but we can do it, and we're going to do it. So now the left now needs to think about how they were going to be able to move collectively with black men in order to attain the revolution. So black men need to now start having a caucus about how they're going to relinquish their patriarchy, because we can't trust that once we have attained the revolution, we won't cross over and then you're still patriarchal to us as black women. So we need to be able to have a caucus within the leftist traditional movement for black men to be able to sort out these contradictions within themselves and within the school of Marx, because Marx is very contradictory on its own, especially when they now try to invoke Marxist feminism. So from a black feminist perspective, the revolution is moving. The revolution is moving without the black man at this point in time. The black men will have to catch up with us, but they can only catch up with us once they've sorted out their patriarchy, because we are all on one accord. We are all in one accord to say that capitalism is a problem, but now we need to deal with patriarchy. One thing that the Black Feminist Caucus is doing at the moment is that even us as women, we are to some extent subject to patriarchy ourselves. That's where the notion of patriarchal princesses comes from. And this is something that we are constructively dealing with internally, right? And this goes through reading Black feminist literature to inform us as to what is the struggle for black women. So in order for us to move progressively, we need to understand what is the positioning of the left at the moment outside of the feminist question, because the feminist question is dealing with itself and will continue to move. Thank you.
Just to clarify one thing, I'm Pindes through, yes, and I'm a member of the South African Student Congress, an organization that finds its roots from the time of Steve Biko, whom I regard as the god of student activism in South Africa and beyond. He was the one that had the dream and of making sure that there is a black-led student organization that needed to fight the injustices of the apartheid regime in relation to the curriculum, in relation to Bantu education, and all other tenets that were hindrance to black people in South Africa from accessing quality education. Unfortunately, he died without seeing freedom. But he lives in our hearts. He lives in our minds. Every day when we wake up, we always say we want to be like him. I think I'll put it clear. We have a problem many of us on the conceptualization of what is free education. Some people believe free education is a system whereby the state must just pay for your fees at the university. But there are different school of thoughts in relation to what encompasses free education. Because free education must also take into cognizance what are you eating as a student. What are you using to travel to school or to the university as a student? Who pays for you for that? The books, the tuition, and the accommodation. There can never be free education that does not cover the food aspect of it. You can't have black students perpetually eating snowballs and are expected to think and participate in class like their white counterparts who come with food in school that is of high nutritious quality. You can't. So that is very critical. You can't, sometimes you are not even able to go to school because there is no money for you to take the municipal bus or a taxi to school. That's the reality. So when we speak about free education, we are speaking about the state making sure as a policy that every student has those things as a basic tenets. We run into a risk in the country because SASCO has been fighting for free education for time immemorial, from the time of even Steve Biko himself, which now has been not necessarily hijacked, but there is a new grouping that has come into the political discourse in relation to what is termed as the fees must fall, a movement, which is a popular movement, of course, that lacks leadership to drive the process to its logical conclusion. And it has been infiltrated to a certain extent by imperial forces. America and Europe can never be our motive forces. They can never be the motive force of the revolution because they are imperialist. They pursue an agenda of making sure that they loot our resources continuously and perpetually. That's why the fees must fall led call for free education is highly funded to a certain extent. We have tried to have been beaten by police. We have not slept where we are supposed to because of what police does. But I have never in my life seen a strike that has food, has water, has everything. I've never seen it, but now with the fees must fall. And I speak through experience because I have been convened on numerous occasions by the intelligence of the United States, which is here in Durban and also in Johannesburg, in relation to what is it that they want to see in the country, using a genuine call for free, decolonized education. But we've always been clear with them. The major problem is that the ANC knows nothing about higher education per se. It's preoccupied with tendering systems, inclusive of the Department of Higher Education, where when you critique it, you rest assured YCL is going to fight you because they believe you're fighting the General Secretary of the party, who is the Minister of Higher Education. But we tell people that we are not scared of that. We can't, because Nzimande is the General Secretary, then Nzimande failed to implement a resolution of the ANC. In 1994 election, by the way, the ANC identified education as an apex priority. When you say these things an apex priority, you are saying that everything must stop, but you must make sure that we make free education a living proof. What has the ANC done over 24 years? Nothing. What has the Department of Education done over 8 years? Nothing. You see? So it becomes a problem when The left is fragmented. By the way, I doubt there's a left in South Africa. People are using the left ideology for the pursuance of narrow agendas. That's the reality. And you run a risk because NUMSA said this thing, but the party was in the forefront of the expulsion of more than 350,000 workers from their home, which is COSATU. Today, because Ubaba is fighting comrades in the party now is speaking the same language that NUMSA was speaking, that they made sure that they affected. You have a confused left in the country. You have a fragmented left that cannot pursue any struggle for the conclusion of socialism. It's not possible. We shouldn't be in this, because first and foremost, yesterday I listened to the presentation, which was very good in relation to the relationship of the ANC and the party and COSATU. How can the left be in a relationship with the ANC, which is not necessarily a left organization? It's a disjuncture in itself. That's why we're in this process, because the party has been used to craft things that were always to be seen to be protecting the revolution, but they were protecting their stomachs. So when you wage a revolution, especially in the higher education sector that we are in, we are speaking of an education that is not decolonized one. As education, all the books, the European books, all the examples that were taught about, they are European. But you are expected that when you finish, you must go work in South Africa with a European mentality. That is very wrong. You can't do that. There are many African scholars that have written quite good literature in various fields that could be used. But universities, they don't want those. Universities, they don't want critical African writers to be part and parcel of the curriculum. Because we are going to question. Because universities, they have continued to be a bastion of white minority rule. They are propagating the ideas of the white man. Those ideas say, you as a black, you must study the useless, so-called useless courses so that you can go and work for them. It does not make you that when you leave the institution, you must go and start something for yourself and your community. That's why in South Africa today, we have nearly 1 million of qualified graduates that are unemployed because of the mismatch of the curriculum. And we supported that the minister was a leftist, but I think we made a mistake in relation to this, because we thought that he was going to change all those things using the Marxist-Leninist ideological perspective of the party. But he has failed. Instead, the minister has been a driving force towards promulgating these ideas that have always been there in higher education. That department is run by highly arrogant people who don't want to take anything that is supposed to be effected in higher education. You can't do that. You can't have a situation where you run the department differently, as in colleges, universities of technology, and comprehensive universities. You have different sets of rules for those. You have colleges. If you are in a TVET, you must attend first before you are given your commuting allowance. You have to sign a register that you have attended, and you get given your allowance, traveling allowance, after 3 months. Where do you get the money to go to school in those 3 months? That's why TVET colleges have a high rate of dropouts. Because students, they go to Omashonisa, they ask for money and so forth, and they are not even able to pay it back because they're not employed. So at the end of the day, they drop out because they see that the state is not assisting them. You see? You have universities where every month your money enters your bank account. You have your duty to make an example where you are not given money, but you are given a card that says you must go and buy from ShopRite and Spar. So we have tendered the system now. Why? This institution had kitchens, by the way. Why don't you revive the kitchens? Get people who employ them full-time, provide food for students. You see? You go to class extremely hungry because even NSFAS funds very less number of students. You are expected to concentrate. How can you concentrate when you are hungry? You see? It's problematic in itself. So the state has presided over making sure that the black child remains ignorant, the black child remains without education. Because many students leave the institution precisely because of that. Tell me, you apply to an institution of higher learning, you are given, you come, they say, no, you must pay 500 to make sure that you reserve your space. I qualify to come here. Why must I reserve a space? Where will I get the 500? Beyond that, they say, no, you must pay 3,500 as a registration. Registration for what? Because well, I'll be studying here. I've been given a space. All those are tenants of the capitalist system where they will need to get money at any given moment from everyone. It's better in such institutions because of that, you have to pay at least 80% of the fees up front. And of that, no UCT, NSFAS, because NSFAS has a cap of 70,000 rand. Some of the courses are way above 70,000, up until 100,000. So it means that the following year, NSFAS funded student is not going to be able to enter the university because NSFAS can't cover the whole amount of money. Why doesn't the ministry regulate pricing of this institution? Why does a degree in psychology at UniZulu, at UKZN, UCT, everywhere, why is it charged differently? Because the same books that are used, we use the same books, by the way. The same lecturers, we use them to a certain extent. Why then it differs in relation to that? The state, that's why our institution, your former black institution, they remain so poor in terms of resources, in terms of everything. Precisely because these ones of Stellenbosch or UCT, they have your Rich Boys Club, which donates to them for the upkeep of the institution. They fund the institutions. So they are able to do all the things that they want to do. That's why even in research output, our predominantly black institutions are not living up to the required standard because, of course, they lack resources. And many of the best professors, they refuse to go and work there. So you wouldn't get the best of the best because the best in South Africa is too what's this thing, man? In South Africa, you have a situation where racism is still blatantly everywhere. You have, if you are a so-called Afrikaner, you will want to go and teach if a lecturer at Stellenbosch and so forth, those institutions. But if you are a black, it's very hard to crack it to go and teach even in UCT. Black good qualified lecturers as blacks are made to play second fiddle in the academia because the state has not protected them. The state has not decolonized this education. You see, it becomes a problem. So you have that problem, but also I wish to state it that when I think it was good what the leadership of Abahlali said, it, that on the 26th they will be there. That we need to link our struggles. Because our struggles speak about fighting for an injustice and ushering an equitable society. How? Is that if we link them, we have Abahlali. We are also Abahlali, by the way. We don't own any buildings, we are students and so forth. We don't own any homes. We are not rich. But we don't connect with the struggles of Abahlali, baseMjondolo. It becomes a problem. Because the society that we are in now, it tells you in relation to the high repossession rates of houses and cars from your so-called middle class, where people then are forced to go and be back room dwellers or to go back to shacks, because also the state is failing to provide equitable housing for its citizens. We are not saying the state must get money, we must get money anywhere in relation to funding this process of free education. The state gives 19 billion rand, I think, this year to higher education. 19 billion rand for me, it's enough for all students in South Africa to get free education. The major problem is when these universities, they know that the state is going to fund them. They must increase their money, their tuition fees, charge more. And the state puts money there. But the state does not want to know as to how this money is utilized in this institution. The Auditor General audits all departments, but it doesn't audit universities. I don't know why, because universities are funded by the state. Billions of rand are going to higher education. So it becomes a problem because universities are saying they are autonomous. Autonomous from who when you are funded by state money? Autonomous from who? There's no autonomy there. You are a state institution, you are part and parcel of the arms of the state. So education is a contested terrain. You know, the Afrikaners, they introduced Afrikaner without even a document detailing what is Afrikaner. They enforced it because they wanted everyone to study and learn Afrikaans. What have we done over the years? Apart from leaking the former regime tactics and continuing with them. Go to any TVET and see how appalling they are. When they're doing engineering, they're still using your Golf 1 that was manufactured by Hitler in World War II to do their engineering work, mechanical engineering. Today, a car, you put it in a machine and it tells you all the problem. You go and take out the parts. We are not moving up with the standard of time. You see? So it's become a problem because the department has micromanaged TVET that even if you want to buy a ball pen at a TVET college, you must send a memo to the DG that you want to buy a bag. And then it comes from national. I'm telling you, this is very ridiculous what the department is doing there. The department runs a TVET worse than house paza shopper run in the communities. You can't allow that. You can't. Whereas the department is scared to run a university in the same process. You can't allow that. We need free education in South Africa. That one is not given. In fact, we have taken for too long. While ending, we need to link our struggles. When we are fighting for free education, Abahlali must also join. The party, because it claims to be the vanguard, you don't become a vanguard by virtue of you saying you are a communist party. You must earn it through fighting for popular struggles. If EFF itself says, nah, what they are for the left, as they say, they use the Sankara code, they must also be part and parcel of that. What is it that does not, what is it that is a cause that we are not united as the left? It's egos of our leadership. They believe they're bigger than the revolution itself. which is problematic. We need everyone to fight for this because the ANC, I think, has outlived its Lokuza life. So it must step aside. And you need the left to take over, but how do you take over if you are disjointed yourself? Thank you very much.
You will bear with me, Chair. Izweletu, Africa. Thank you very much, Chair. In fact, I was trying to request to make a proposal through you, Chair. My proposal is in this nature. I was kind of confused in terms of the presentation of Comrade Pinda, because I thought here on the agenda of ours, it was going to make presentation on fees must fall, and I've never get a theory, the ideological structure of fees must fall, or the dominating ideas in it. I've never get the challenges facing fees must fall currently. I've never get the aftermath of fees must fall. I've never get what is happening currently with fees must fall. And I guess, Chair, I know why that has never come out. Maybe it's simple because Pinda Mfukeng there is not a leader of fees must fall. And I here, maybe the problem was that you can't be speaking about something you don't know, because you'll end up misleading us here. So I'm proposing to you, Chair, that allow us a chance. There are many fees must fall activists here who can give the perspective of fees must fall and tell you about the challenges facing fees must fall. So I'm very worried that should we continue in this fashion, because there's no presentation there. It's just the views that I'm not sure whether the views of SASCO of an individual or whatsoever. I'm very worried. So for this issue of fees must fall to be dealt with, I think you must add another chair there and allow a lead of fees must fall to give us perspective on fees must fall. Because I'm very worried. And also, before I sit down, Chair, and before I allow you to deal with my proposal, the view is that the issue there, we are also as fees must fall activists, some of us, and myself, I represent TUT fees must fall. We question the credibility of MPO. Thank you very much, Chair. Okay. Please respond to my proposal first.
Okay. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we squabble among ourselves and we end up labeling Pinda as this or that. We believe that Pinda is one of ours. But I think in his presentation, he was too limited. I don't know for what reasons. He rather focused too much on higher education and how it micromanages institution of higher learning without breaking down fees must fall. It's nitty-gritty details. So without victimizing him, he has now given us a perspective. I think you should allow us, because fees must fall does not have a lead, by the way. All of us who are here, who've been part of fees must fall, allow us, make it a dialogue. Not to say Pinda has presented, now we are going to ask 3 questions and then that's it. Because we will not be doing justice to this sitting. Here we've got Abahlali baseMjondolo, who must go back with a clear understanding of what we're doing last year, which we are still going to continue to do moving forward. We want to lobby them. So let us make this session more of a dialogue, because there's a lot that needs to be unpacked in relation to fees must fall. I'm seconding the proposal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Come, you must.
I think the problem here is that we view fees must fall as an education, as an organization. It's not an organization, it's a struggle of students about free education. Now what I'm saying is that Pinda is correct to speak about issues. Those are essential issues that bring out the struggle of fees must fall. So I do not understand when you say fees must fall has a leader. There is no leader of fees must fall. It's the plight of students in universities. So it's a counter proposal. I do not agree that somebody else must be given a chair. We have highlighted issues. What we should do now is discuss onto what the presenters have presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I actually would like to just bring some direction here. I think the objective for us here is to acknowledge that there are struggles happening and there is absolutely no platform to address these struggles. So the speakers there tried to highlight these struggles. And going forward, what I do understand is that these struggles need a platform. And these struggles, having those speakers speaking there is insufficient. The time is not sufficient to address them in detail. Therefore, my suggestion as the center is that the center does host seminars. And I think there should be a seminar specifically focusing on fees must fall issue. This discussion is not going to address the things that needs to be addressed. When the Freedom Charter addressed, there shall be free education. This was started in Somafco. Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College was one of the aspects that wanted to address free education. But unfortunately, that got lost on the wayside. And this now should be just a start of discussions to come. We are not going to say, Pinda, you have not done well in your presentation. I can say that your presentation, you've managed to generate the excitement that is required. And I'm pleased that everybody has stood up here and the passion is there. And thanks to the memory of Mzala, that this passion is coming out in this discussion. So, Chair, I put it up to you to arrange a Fees Must Fall seminar. Thank you.
Vivani bomzala, viva.
Viva.
Nantsok. Ndizawuqala ndicela nje uvele ndibethe ngolwenkobe. Ndingabe nditshona ngapha nangapha. Mandiqale apha ndizawuhamba ngendlela yezithethi ebezithetha ngayo. Ndizawucela uqala apha kumzala kuba kuna comrade apha kunantoni khona omzala. Apha ndizawuqala pha ngomzala uZikode. Mzala uZikode kunento apha endiyibonileyo. Lento na le indihluphile. Sathi xa siqala apha ilentoza abahlali baseMjondolo babekhona futhi basiculela kamnandi. Izolo bangabikho kwinkqubo. Namhlanje bakhona. Ingathi ngoku abahlali baseMjondolo bona ingathi bazoba zilento okuthiwa zi-praise singers. Imandi xa ndithi ngesingesi baxa ngaba ndithi imbongi ndizaba ndiyayibhuda mandiyibeke ngesingesi. Ngoku ingathi kunalanto yoba bazontyontyela iinkokheli zabo. Kanti ndithanda lanto ba kufuneka nibe khona nibe yinkqubo. Xa ngaba kuxoxwa ngento umzekelo ebezithethwa phezulu, khanibekho ilizwi lenu alivakalanga. Kanti apha sizothini? Sizibuze lonto. Kodwa ke mandiqhube ke ndiye phambili. Ndingathi uthethile apha wathetha ngee-councillors no-mayor babulala abantu yonke lonto. Inyani lonto. Inyani lonto. Bazawuthi ke abantu abathanda lo mgaqo siseko wale entshona, hayi khawuzeni evidence. Naku nje bayafa abantu. Nasemarikana bafa abantu futhi kwathiwa nazi email kodwa kuzothiwa hayi zane evidence. Nansi nje into siyibona. Onqobile nzuza baphi namhlanje. Futhi ndibebuhlungu into ba umzala uZikode khange aphathe kwababantu. Into ba kanye babefela ntoni kuba lokho awuvela usukufi. Ikhona lento babeyithethe balekileyo abayifelayo. Ndibuye ndithi ke wena mzala Zikode lento leni biphendula izolo kodwa bayibaleka abanye. Into yoba kwase kwathi hayi bibekwa kwi-context ethile. Kukhona uComrade Roy waseNdiya ethetha noLenin esitsho into bayi ijongeni lento yoba sithini sekhe ubuhlobo namakapitali. Lamakapitali lana sezinzile kwaye anamandla azawusigwinya. So yilanto ephinda ke iphendula into ba kutheni ANC ikulemekwe kuyo. Kutheni urhulumente ekuthiwa ngurhulumente wabantu abamnyama ekulemekwe kuyo. Ugwinywa intoni ngalamakapitali. Ngoba sitheni sithe hayi masizifake sibe kwi-alliance for i-peace nayo yonke loo nto. At what expense? And at whose expense? Yethu thina isigwinyile isibulele. So laa nto iphendulekile phaa. Mandikhawuleze futhi kuba loku hayi kodwa sawuthetha mani ilunch sawubuya siyibone iti asiyiqali.
Sorry, comrade.
Yes. No, I will be brief. Kube khona lento yale ncwadi ebesiyilentozelwa apha izolo. The book launch, Miss Pampalis or what? Karin, I'm sorry to say this. We are still fighting for free education in this country, and we come to such a very important occasion, and then we expect us to buy a book. We're still saying we are fighting for free education. We are coming to sell us a book instead of giving us that free knowledge. No. And then moving forward.
Comrade, could I ask you to contain your questions?
Okay.
You've asked
Okay.
2 already, right?
Okay.
Are you asking another or?
No, actually it's a comment.
Okay.
It's a comment because we have to engage.
Yes, no. If you could, there are other people here who want to also comment and ask questions, comrade.
Yes, I do understand that, but hey, time, this thing of time is an issue. It's a serious issue. Okay, I will move on to this thing about fees must fall. Fees must fall does not have a leader. But fees must fall started somewhere. And I will say this unapologetically. We are not here as Ufa Simba YCL to defend Unzimand. Because we are not about defending individuals. We are about socialism. That's what we are about. Hence, what I will say is that if we are saying that Pinda should not speak about fees must fall, who should speak about fees must fall? And why that particular person? Who chose that person, where and when and how? Yeah, but then to us, because I will say this, actually we started fees must fall, but at the time we did not give it a name. We started it at Peter Maritzburg, eMgungundlovu. Sihlale office singalali. Siyenza lento into ba masishukumise kuba sifuna lento okuthiwa yi-socialism. Singufasimba. Silidwa ngubani? Unzimande epha ku-government kuba lo wasazodlala unzimande thina wanye ubani ophi. Size nge-socialism into esisengayo apha. We started that. And then ke ngoku yathi xa seyibamba because we must have a catalyst. Funeka kube khona i-starting point abantu abashukumisa, and then it was given the name fees must fall. And then we started seeing people said to be leaders. Yeah, but I will be short. Yes, there's a lot, but let me just pass on the mic.
I have one request from two Ilokuza, Abahlali baseMjondolo, because Uzzigote Ute, they work very closely with the SACP. Now my request to them is that if they work very closely with the SACP, they must make sure that they make the SACP what it is supposed to be rather than what it is now. That's my request to them, and I think they understand what I'm saying. Secondly, with regards to if fees must fall, I think Upinda has unpacked it. My comment is simply that when we say free education, it must be understood in 2 ways. We're saying education must be free in monetary terms, because the fees that are charged by the institutions of higher learning, especially the universities, are ridiculously and outrageously high. We cannot afford. But again, we're saying it must be freed from its colonial chains. We're tired of going to lecture rooms, Pinda, to be taught how to become good Americans in South Africa. We want to be taught how we can respond correctly to the socio-economic issues facing our country. So as a starting point, we're saying the government must provide free quality education as the most immediate and urgent socio-economic necessity now. But fees must fall has assisted us in actually exposing the government that for the last 23 years into democracy, they did not have a plan in relation to free education. Because I think it's a contradiction for Comrade Jacob Zuma to say he's part of Polokwane conference, where this thing was reiterated to say free education must be implemented. When students stand up and say, implement free education, he says, no, in fact, I'm going to establish a commission of inquiry that is going to look at feasibility. How do you look at the feasibility of something that you agreed on in the conference of the ANC? It's a contradiction. So I will end there.
Thank you, comrade.
Amanda.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, mina ekuye kwangihlaba umxhwele kulama speech akade khulunywa la. Ngiye ubusisiwe noma engasekho ubusisiwe ngoba njenge feminist ngiye ngajabula ngibe inspired kakhulu mayesithi we as women we must eradicate patriarchy. We must know that the place of the woman is in the struggle, not in the kitchen. We must stop being the caregivers. We must be leaders. We must liberate ourselves. Because we know that there's an animal, which is called a dog. Inja mangabe usuyiqaqile ihlele esihlahleni uyiqaqile ibwadi bosho esihlahleni ibilo izungeza noma isikhululekile. Tina njengabo mama, we need to liberate ourselves to eradicate patriarchy. Ngoba njengoba namanje siyabulawa kusukela lapho kusukela ekuthenini gender inequality. Ngithandile ubusisiwe futhi mayisithi mostly ku gender inequality sijwayele ukuthi sithi it's between men and women. Ubusisiwe uye wathinta LGBTH community. LGBTH community iya-abuswa kakhulu. Asikavumi ukuyimukela emphakathini wethu. We are still discriminating them. We are still killing them because they are LGBTH community. Gibe inspired kakhulu. So abahlali napa omama abahlali ngiyethemba bazwile ukuthi ubusisi uthini uthi they must fight against patriarchy mabangavuma ukucindezeleka mabe babaholi abaholi bethi stand firm being leaders being women leaders they mustn't lean. They mustn't say there's I need a man to be financially independent. I must have a man in order to be a good leader. So that was inspired me a lot. Okunye kwangithinta futhi uComrade uPhinda okunye uComrade uPhinda mayesithi siyathanda ukuthi sibhale ngabantu base Europe and wherever asibhale ngabo Mzala ubani njengoba kukhona kunama students la sifisa ukubona ama students ebhala ngombutho wabahlali sifuna ukubona ama students ebhala ngomzala Nxumalo sifuna ukubona ama students ebhala ngama leaders ala eMzansi siye kulo sabhala ngo Jan van Riebeeck ngo Hitler esingabazi noma babe khona noma siyaqanjela. Okunye futhi okuye kwaba ngaba inspired ngakho uComrade uSolani my SCT yilo kunjani eCape Town kunale ngxaki le esinayo nathi la ngiyayazi ngempela futhi ngiyayazi enye futhi into ojika uthola ukuthi abahlali baseMjondolo nabahlali basema township nabahlali bakuma backyard ugcina sekuthiwa Department of Health are the hotspot of HIV. Lokho njani abahlali baseMjondolo abahlali basemaplazini abasemakhaya kuzoba LGBTH community those are the hotspots of HIV whereas everybody is the hotspot of HIV. Ngiyabonga.
Okay, thanks very much. I think the discussion is a very, very interesting one this morning. And, but I would just like to say that, to put another point to another point of view to that which has been expressed, in particular about the Minister of Higher Education and Training, because I was his advisor for 6 years. So I think now I need to step up to the plate and put another side to the story. People have mentioned differentiation of fees at different institutions. There's differentiated kind of expenditure at the different institutions. And I agree with that. I think that the department needs to do more. It needs to be more interventionist there, at least as far as non-curricular issues are concerned. That there are insufficient funds for higher education, well, that's true, it's clear. But the direction that things have been moving have been in a more positive direction. More and more money has been going to higher education. Let me just tell you what's been done under Nzimande's ministership. First of all, TVET enrollments have doubled. TVET funding has increased for both infrastructure and operational works. Now we've heard that the allegation that the TVETs are all rubbish, but actually they're not all rubbish. Some of them do pretty well. Students go there, they get educated, they come out, they get jobs. Not all of them get jobs, but no jobs doesn't mean because you had a bad education. It means because the economy is slow. The economy is not doing well, and it's not generating jobs, and we heard about that yesterday. Apprenticeships in South Africa, which are another area of the department's responsibility, they've tripled now in the last 6 years. In higher education, the minister has focused funding on the historically black universities. And most of the money for infrastructure in particular has been going to those universities. Now those universities now, Fort Hare, Venda and so on, they're not at the level of UCT. And they're not going to be in a hurry because UCT's been developing there for over 100 years actually. And so it'll happen. I mean, the important issues for places like UCT, Wits, Stellenbosch, is to open them up so you have more black students and more poor students, working class students at those universities. Two new universities have actually been established over in Nzimande's ministry here. And the third one, the Sefako Makgato University, has actually been revitalized. It was the medical campus of Limpopo, but a lot more money has gone into that and will continue to go into that to have it as a standalone medical university. NSFAS too has been maligned, and in some ways it deserves to be maligned because it's inefficient and it doesn't do its job smoothly. But despite that, NSFAS funding has increased from 2009 up to now, from about 4 million to over 12 million now. Billions, sorry, I'm talking billions, not millions, yeah. From 4 billion up to 12 billion. Over its life, over 1.1 million students have actually graduated on the basis of having NSFAS loans and would not have graduated without it. And most of them are working out there in the economy. They're making a living for themselves. So NSFAS, despite its problems, is not useless. It's an organization which has done a great deal. And if it works better and if more money goes to it, it'll work even better. That's basically, I think, what I want to say. I mean, I acknowledge the problems that people have been talking about. You know, people are talking from their own experiences, and we can't doubt that. But something is happening out there which you don't actually see in your day-to-day life if you're in a university. So, yeah, okay, thank you.
Ngelishwa ubusi akasekho, I wanted to start with uSisibusi, with the issue of women being oppressed kakhulu. I think, comrades, this thing has been said a lot of times, and then we as men tend to not have even time to defend ourselves because umuntu uyasabe xa kucela abantu abangomama. All of you, and I think what's lacking, that's the education of culture towards man. Like for me, for example, I've said yesterday I'm from Eastern Cape. There's nothing in our culture which says that you must beat up your wife. There's nothing in our culture which says that a woman does not decide on anything on the household. For example, one of the most sacred secrets in the Xhosa culture in Eastern Cape, when men go to the initiation school, you call it circumcision okanye entabeni. If men are coming back there, and they are from entabeni, when they come, there's what is called a umgidi, a celebration. When men come out there, they are told that they will go kwamadoda esibayeni for umyalelo, and then they will go kwabantu abangomama. So women were always given a role in our culture. It is now that you find these bourgeoisie men who go to education and read these books about manhood, then they come us and then they come to Amazoti, these things we do not have in our culture. I agree there are certain aspects of our culture whereby men are given the final decision. But issues of oppressing towards women, it is not who we are. It is what men have seen on this TV of these capitalist movies. We as Africans are against that. And we have never done it in our culture. Even women are also given a leading role. If he's a woman who's not married, the son takes the surname of the mother, and the mother becomes the head of the family. So it's disturbing sometimes whereby people see into different society of people who don't understand what a man is. And then they come and tell us that men are evil and men are this. It is not the case. Those people who do this are certain men who are not educated about our culture.
Thank you.
I would like to come to the issue of the so-called fees must fall. A lot of comrades within my organization, like the ANC, and also within the alliances, Abo YCL and COSATU, and also student formations, Abo SASCO and others, or Youth League, they always say that fees must fall is imperialist, like Eshilta Tupinda, and that it's funded. What I hate about my comrades, when they see something imperialist, that this thing is controlled by white people, no one from SASCO, no one from ANC tells that they declare that they have a shutdown. What they do, they come to meetings and convince us this is called by white people, but no one has ever said that today, as a country, as the ANC, or as SASCO, or as Youth League, who are shutting down all campuses. No one does that. They just come and tell us, no, this is imperialist, comrades, you must be disciplined. Disciplined for what? Because we are treated as puppets of the ANC and SASCO. Because now, at the same point in time, you'll see second semester, people will be divided who to strike. Because now, abanye bamba no mama, abanye bamba no Ramaphosa. So people will not strike because they are told that they must not strike. And these are the things that are truthful. In case they tell you to be divided. Like for now, we hear a lot of comrades coming in this podium. For once, all these great speakers, you will see how people have become, they have been becoming loyal badges of organization. If you put Tatu Nzimande there, you put Jacob Zuma, you put Ramaphosa, because I believe you need the three of them. And then you ask on the issue of free teachers education, you'll see comrades will not be vocal because back Chakama list. I agree with you, Pinamufugeng, on the issue of food stamps, lesser duty. White people teach us a lot of economics that they'll tell you food stamps have been inefficient in America. Yet our own government delivers food stamps about DUT, which is very disgusting. So we do things which have been proven that they do not assist people. And there's the issue of this. I heard one comrade telling us about Unzimandelo Makomanis, that man who played was jail. I so wish to meet him one day. Plain Zimande keeps on telling us that, I'm not a communist comrade. Plain Zimande keeps on telling us that, there's a 90 billion increase, there's a 100 billion increase. Comrades, don't be fooled. If we are increasing the funds to NSFAS, what you do not know is that the government, the universities are increasing fees more than the CPIX index, which means that the consumer, it is the basket which is measured on how we buy products and services. So whether you increase money or not, it gets eliminated by inflation rate, which is increasing. Plain money does not increase money according to the inflation adjusted. La mala inyusayo is sure inflation it be equal on 94. And kata no banyo on 94, but it's still equal based on the economy we're in. I knew la man, it's just economics, it's your own charm. Diego Tatu the last one, Shem. I had a lot when I started Bulen Nxumalo. I get emotional in these teams. The event, personal. And I can try to select lender of the left. I can finance high school. I liberal on the issue of a class struggle as a South African or Superai. Because now, when you speak about class struggle, how does it fit into the race struggle? Because before you go to a class struggle, I believe that there must be a race struggle. The class struggle would mean that even when a white man and an Indian are poor now, we must be treated the same. Yeah, people are afraid to say these things. It means now I must be equal to the same white person, the same Afrikaner. Their forefathers did this to us. So now true class, does it mean that we must be equal because we're not considering race? What I think we need in South Africa is a race struggle. We need to say that black people should be in front, then the others must follow. We need to make those tough decisions. And I want you to explain me this class struggle and how we deliver our race struggle, because as black people, we are in poverty. And we keep on coming to these podiums and pretending like we are in harmony and peace. And goes.
Thanks.
It will be fair from Abahlali mhlambe ukuxolisa ngendaba yayizolo. There's been a miscommunication and misunderstanding. Because Abahlali bebazi ukuthi we were invited ukuthi sizokhuluma namhlanje. But why we were here the day before yesterday, it's because we invited choir just to entertain. If gezwakala. Just the day before yesterday, we invited choir just to entertain and not necessarily to participate. But izolo again, AAT understanding was it to go bizwenje usibu ukuthi azopresenta on Saturday. Not ukuthi si decide ukungezi ngoba siphakeme asiphakamanga comrades siphakamanga asizile la uzoshowa off. Enye into ebenzeke izolo besinamanye ama arrangements besinawo njengabahlali besinemhlangano eminingi sibhizi sizabala asiwa ama conference specialists sihlale sisemzabalazweni almost every day. So we want to apologize to people who think that asizanga because suddenly we become so smart, or maybe you're trying to be strategic for what? To impress who? Or kwatsela who? That wasn't the case, but we do want to apologize for not attending. Ngalogo siyazehlisa. Of course, siyazi ukuthi obani abasibulalayo. Akusinto ebefanele sizoyixelelwa la kwi-conference. We know our enemy, and we even are able to put face on our enemy. Asikhulumi nje ngo-IMF nabo World Bank as our enemy. Asikhulumi nje nge-system faceless as our enemy. We know exactly who assassinated uThuli Ndlovu. We can tell you exactly ukuthi uQumbela, uThembu Nkosi, abonqobile Nzuza, and also there are a lot of people who are answering to the assassination that have killed Abahlali baseMjondolo. So akusiyo ke into esingathi siyimisile kuzolo uzokuza ukuthi i-enemy yethu ubani, if I heard you correctly. On the question of the SACP, I think I've made it very clear ukuthi the strategic relationship that I presented was basically at a very low level. In fact, in one branch, in one thing is, I was just making an example, ukuthi through working together in a local SACP yakwandengezi, we're able ukuthi siwabophe ama-gangsters abesebenzela i-ANC who happened to be councillors of the ANC, uNgcobo noLutshegu, no gunmen wabo, who were calling the shot in this city, whose blood of our comrades can be asked from them. Abasi wama suspect namhlanje, they are serving their life sentence. So I'm saying on that, we're able to strategically work out a relationship and cornered Abongola to an extent to which they were prosecuted for assassinating uThuli Ndlovu. Now, whether that relationship is sustainable, what does it mean? I must say it sometimes kuyadinga ukuthi sibambisane for a particular or for a specific for a common goal. So siyayiqhenya ke ukuthi ama-communists, not that banendaba ney'mpilo zethu, we've been killed for a very long time, but simply because i-gangster yakwazi ukuphinde izobulala kwi-SACP ibulale kwi-ANC, that's when the SACP and the ANC thought he was really a monster, and because he was now a threat to our own comrades. So if our comrades are clear with our working relationship, kuleyo one branch. So it worked very well. Ngoba, these guys are serving their life sentence. What the future of that entails, I don't know. The class struggle, I make no apology. Question. the context of my speech was not necessarily about the class struggle. Abahlali are clear. When we refer to ourselves, we are not seeing even ourselves as a working class for that matter. Because that on its own has its own definition. We don't even see ourselves as a middle class for that matter. I've made a number of references to the impoverished, who are even below the law, who are just beneath your ordinary day-to-day of your reasonable human being. So there is no compromise, maybe, of that use of that language. But we are clear that this is not just about the class struggle. I refer to Abahlali basemakhaya ezilalini, I refer to Abahlali basemkhukhwini basemaplazini as impoverished, out of the system, not even recognized as human beings. Sithathwa njengabantu abangacinga abangenangqondo who must be represented, sikhulunyelwe. Sithathelwe ama-decisions size sigqitshelwe, simply because we are taken as people who do not even count in our society. So I'm sure I'm very clear on that. This is not just about struggling. It's not about color. But it's a reality that there's something seriously wrong with our own humanity, irrespective of our color, gender, age, and so on. That's what needs to be questioned. That is why my emphasis was on Ubuntu, before we become what we are becoming later on. Yeah, I think that's it that I needed to respond to.
I think SASCO, the Youth League and YCL, from time immemorial, they've always been in the forefront for the fighting for free education in South Africa. There's no doubt about that. Even most of the comrades who today believe that there are more fees must fall, they were once part of us at a certain moment in time, fighting for the very same social injustice in this society. Even these fees must fall, by the way. Comrades of SASCO, the YCL and the Youth League have been there participating, because we have refused to be told that it's no longer about free education, because now it has been characterized by the media as a fees must fall, so that it is looked as if it's some form of resistance against the powers that be. We said no, we will participate in this. This is a just and equitable struggle to pursue. Beside the issue of free education, by the way, for the transformation of the sector, we have participated. There is nowhere where we have abdicated our responsibilities as these structures of not leading popular revolts, even when, because people, they don't know. If you are leading these structures, you are found, it's true, you are found by the leadership of the ANC, of the alliance, sometimes telling you that you must stop that. But we have never stopped that. That is true. It's quite right what the comrade is saying as to where this issue of fees must fall started. But the problem in the country is that everything must be projected to have started in Johannesburg. That's the major problem we have. And you don't apportion irrespect where this thing has started. People want to come with narratives that are not there. Even here, when I made the presentation, I said it. The struggle for free education, we are never going to abdicate it. Whether it is led by Fees Must Fall, whether it is led by YCL, it is led by the EFF, this is a just struggle that must be fought with all our might. There is no way we can abdicate that. We know we are in this institution. Some of the people are squatters who are leading these structures. Some, they stay with students who don't have money to pay for accommodation. So it's a reality what we are speaking about. To make an example, since I came to university, I have never stayed alone in a house, in a university room. And we have always stayed in 3s, 4s. So that we assisted, even when the universities were saying, no, but it's wrong to have squatters. So no, We are poor. We are poor. We will dismantle this system. We will make sure that any student that has a problem gets to be assisted. We have came back before schools opened to assist our black brothers in various forms so that they are able to access higher education. I fully agree with Comrade John. The department has done something to a certain extent. It's not all gloomy. The department has pushed to Parliament a bill that is now taking the war of academic institutional autonomy to the doorstep of university. The powers of university, in fact, I think it has passed, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it has passed in Parliament. We applaud the department for that because we've always said that the major problem in South Africa in education is when this institution uses autonomy as a barrier to access. So I think now we have dealt with that issue. We are happy about it. We must apportion where it is true, we must give credit. But where it is no, where there's something that is not happening, we must say it that this is not happening. But the struggle for free education, comrades, we are always going to participate in it. Who lead it, it's immaterial to us.
I joined COSAS, I think it was 1982. And my old man, my father asked me, what is this COSAS? What are you doing? What is, didn't understand what this COSAS is. I said, you see, we're fighting for a non-racial, non-sexist, dynamic education for all. And he looked at me for a long time, puzzled. And then when we were eating dinner, I asked again, what is this COSAS? And I had to ask him now, what's your problem with this COSAS? And he said, you see, and he used the language of his age. He was born in 1914. So I don't want to sound sexist myself, but that's the language he used, so I will use it. He said, what I understand is this: a man must have a job or must have means of living. And a man must be able to put food on the table for his children, must be able to send them to school, etc., etc., must be able to buy clothes for them, etc., etc. So that's what he said. Now, that is a class question. That is a class response. And then in South Africa, the issue of class has been tainted by the issue of race because of the legislations that were instituted for many years. It means that the working class at some point could not be a unified class which shares certain difficulties together as workers, because a racial issue was introduced. Now, and it was introduced in that particular, in the sense that if I'm a teacher and a white person is a teacher, the white person earns more than me. But we are both teachers, same levels of education, BA degree, and there was something called UED, University Education Diploma, and UED. Both of us have studied for 4 years. We share the same skill. We might even have studied in the same university if I have applied to the Minister of Bantu Education to study in a white university like UCT. Now, that race issue has persisted, but it didn't only end there. It also went further to mean that if a white teacher comes and teaches in a black school, that white teacher is given an added money. I think it was called danger fee or something like that. Is given added money for teaching black children. You see, that's a racial issue that has been there because of our legislation. But it went further. If we talk about triple oppression, a woman who is black and a teacher who is black teaching in the same school, graduated at the same time with the same levels of education. The male teacher was paid more than the female teacher. So that is the national question which continues, which we need to continue to address.
I think what is most important is that one of the things we have learned from Mzala Nxumalo was that he was very against hypocrisy. If we have read his book, A Chief with a Double Agenda, he named a sellout a sellout. However, when these things happen, we're going to have a problem when we avoid to critique each other and when we avoid to hold same different views. Because the latter speaker there, it's fine, let us not personalize it. The views are that the spaces of Fees Must Fall activists comrade on the grounds. Their spaces are forever stolen by people who are just bourgeoisie in the campuses when we shut them down. When these spaces come, they speak the language of students and behave as if they know something. Thank you very much, Comrade Panda. As I speak here, these comrades here, including Comrade Pinda, it's not personal, my comrade. It's politics and it's reality and we have to know it. On the 27th of October 2015, on News 24, you were anti-Fees Must Fall. Late this year, you were anti-Fees Must Fall. Last year, you were anti-it. You were micromanaged. As I speak, Comrade Panda is having 2 cases and the state is following him. It is making sure that you want to take his qualification away from him. What have you done, Pinda, as a leader? As we speak today, TUT students, 5 of them are expelled. As we speak today, a student from TUT was arrested for 5 months and Fees Must Fall was organizing, fighting for Bonkos Kanye to be released. Where were you, Pinda? So we can't, comrade, come here and play hypocrisy and play this thing of defending each other in the cases of saying, he's my comrade or he's my friend. We can't. So, comrade, I'm saying in the spirit of moving and in respecting Mzala Nxumalo, he was very conscious about the issues of being against hypocrisy. If you, please, people, those who don't know that book, I'm insisting, go and read that book. How he named and shamed the sellout. Thanks. Lastly, on that, just a minute. Fees Must Fall movement does not have a leader. That one we agree. But we need to know you first. There's UKZN Fees Must Fall, TUT Vismav, UCTV, because it's a flag structured movement. It is not led from the top to the down. But you can't just wake up in any time because you're a student, and then you come, you say you represent Fees Must Fall, you come there, you speak things you don't know. Some of us, we have enjoyed pain through this. Some of us, we have sacrificed to our education just for a black child to be there. And to find people who take money from the seniors and be handled. Some of the comrades who are with, they write their names and give the white racist lectures and vice chancellors to expel us. And yet you want us to come here and romanticize issues here. Thank you very much for Mzala Nxumalo that they will arrange this. We are requesting it. And when it's arranged, please don't invite these bourgeois to come and pick up on things that they don't know here. Thank you very much.
Ngiyabonga mongameli uthi usikhavile ngendaba yayizolo. But also
Order, comrades.
But also njengoba ngihleli la kumanje nje kunama evictions eLamonti. Abantu bakhishwa ulohulumeni esamvotela sicanga ukuthi uzosikhipha eGibhithe asise ezweni lesithembiso. So sekule issue le yama hypocrites. I think we are hypocrites as well, all of us here, because we are in a building that is built on a stolen land. The building that we are in right now was stolen. It does not belong to the owners of this particular place. So we are all hypocrites in that. But my appeal is that let us comrade combine our struggle. Angabanga ukuthi ngibe uGS wabahlali kube ne communication, because uma sibanga sika left soba nenkinga yokuthi labo abaka right bazo manipulate umbango wethu. Ngiyafisa mina ukuthi ama students fees must fall, because we've had this problem where we engage with some of the students, but
sangazi ukuthi who to engage exactly because nonke anikazazi. Even though ningenayo leader, but ngicala nihleleke so that nathi sizokwazi ukusupporta umzabalazo wenu. Because after all, students are the sons and daughters of the workers. The workers come from the community, Abahlali. So we need one another. So we into eyodwa le. So asingahlukani kanje. Asingezi kulama platforms banga ukuthi ubani ongcono kunomunye. Asike sibheke ukuthi senzani thina ukuthi siphume kuleli hlazo sikulona because kuyihlazo ukuthi sithi si free kodwa sisaphila lempilo esiyiphilayo. Yiloko nje bengifuna ukuthi ngithola mhlambe sithole iway forward that we need to combine our struggle and make it one so that we fight the very same system. Whether ulwa nokuthi kuwina umhlaba wase South Africa, whether ulwa nokuthi imfundo ibe mahala, whether ulwa nokuthi abantu bakhokhelwe ama salaries angcono emsebenzini, istruggle esifanayo leso. So inkinga yethu nginale nkinga le yalama NGOs la angena phakathi kwethu in the name of funding our struggles. Those NGOs are there to separate us. Those NGOs are used by the very same system, but they don't come as a system. They come as abantu abasympathize nathi. Imali kahle kahle senza ukuthi sizehlukane because omunye ufuna ukuqala into yakhe because ufuna ifunding. Nomunye ufuna ukuqala into yakhe because khona ifunding. Ngisurprise ukuthi kufanele sithi sika left sonke sihambe siye endaweni ukuthi sikhompithele ukuthi sifuna ifunding, sibonise ukuthi ubani ongcono kunomunye. Kube kukuhlupheka. This is a reality, amashekdwela. This is a reality. It's not about competition. Ufuna ukuphuma kule nto engikuyona. But how do we fight against the system? Because within among us, khona abantu abazobheka ukuthi si plan ukuthini ukuze silwe nabaka rights. Ukuze bahambe bayobatshela labaka rights. Impimpi inhlezi nazo everywhere. So how do we say even uze ukuthi ulambile ngempela uthi cha ngimela lento engiyifunayo iqiniso. Ngiyabonga.
Tapelo, I must thank you very much because I think you've set the tone for the last session, the way forward. And I think the last panel has now been given their mandate.